sorry, excuse me. It's 7 o'clock, and I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Bolton Select Board. It's Thursday, December 19th, 2024, and we are going to kick things off by considering the first item on our agenda, which is an event approval, a request for approval to hold the Bear Hill Triathlon on Sunday, June 8th, 2025. And I believe we have Shane Kosudich here to speak. Yes, we have. So we have our last part. This is our 15th running of the Bear Hill Triathlon. So what we're asking for permission for is our bicycle zone, which is our boat road, which is our cover road, turns onto Green Road, and then turns onto your becomes our stop. So that like a shaped there. And there are no approximately 45 play marshals at each of those two intersections, which is Harmon Road and Green Road. And Green Road and Bear Hill Road, so traffic coming from each direction is watched for and alerted. So nothing has changed. We have the okay. Great. Any questions?
No, not for me.
No, this is. Questions from me either. So, is there a motion to approve the request to hold the Bear Hill Road Triathlon on Sunday, June 8th, 2025?
So moved, subject to receiving the insurance certificate.
That's correct. As soon as we get that, we'll send it to you.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call. Kate?
Yes.
Stan?
Yes.
And also yes. Thank you, Sue. Okay, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Sue.
Bye-bye. Night.
Okay. Next up on our agenda, we have an Eagle Scout project, a presentation of her project by Sophia Schneider, and a request for acceptance of a rescue ladder at Town Pond. So I would invite is Sophia Schneider available? Here you are. You can unmute yourself and just give us an overview of your project.
Thank you. My name's wrong on my Zoom call. Sorry about that. My name is Sophia Schneider. I'm a soon-to-be Eagle Scout from Troop 1 Stowe. And for my Eagle project, I made 2 ice rescue ladders. So they are meant to, in case somebody falls through the frozen pond during the winter, instead of the first responders going out onto the pond and also being put in danger, they can send out the ladder to hopefully get them that way instead. And so I made one for Bolton and I made one for Stowe, and they live on both of their respective town beaches. And I wanted to come before you guys today and formally present it to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the pictures that we included in our packet. Any questions from any members of the select board?
I think it's a great effort. Thank you very much, Sophia, for doing that. It's certainly needed. Really appreciate it.
I'm happy to serve my community and the communities around me.
No questions from me, but I agree it's a useful and helpful thing to have. So thank you for your work on it.
Great. Yes, thank you so much. Really great project, and appreciate whenever somebody is motivated to give back to their community. So really, congratulations for that. So with that, I would entertain a motion to formally accept Sophia Schneider's Eagle Scout project, the rescue ladder at the town pond.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call. Kate?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Thank you again very much, Sophia, for all your excellent work.
Thanks, Sophia.
Thank you guys for the opportunity to present you with that. I hope you all have a happy holiday.
You as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay. Running a little bit ahead of schedule. Next up, we consider a request from the Parks and Recreation Commission for approval to locate a 20-foot storage container adjacent to the parking lot at the town common and community way. I guess I'm gonna put you on this.
Very first part of the
Hello?
project stuff.
Hello. Hey, I think your audio is weird.
I think I fixed it. Have you checked it in the last
Sure, yeah.
like 2 minutes?
Move it to the town administrator report while we await.
Like Brian, you could still hear Brian's voice in the beginning.
Robin, it can hear you.
Just an update on a few of the projects
Hold
that are
on.
going on. There are other projects percolating in the background.
Main Street, things are proceeding. With the applicant today. The draft bid package is also under review. The release date will be appearing in the Central Register on January 8th, with all packages due back to my office at the end of January. And as Lisa Sheppel is here, just wanted to say as a feel good, we'd received some calls on the community choice aggregation. National Grid also released and received their, I believe, DPU approval for the rates that'll be starting this February. Net hats off to the aggregation committee in Bolton, saving, if you go for the standard product, which is more green than required, you'd be saving about $8 a month, depending on how much electricity you're using, up to about $12 a month. And so with that,
Great. That's
to
good
be
news.
continued. Yeah. So
All right. Thank you. And yeah, why don't we just backtrack for a few moments now that Lisa Sheppel is here, and we were running a little bit early, but Lisa, we actually already made our way to the agenda item containing your request for a storage container. So could you just walk us through that request briefly? Oh, make sure you unmute yourself, please.
Sorry about that. Forgot about that. So yeah, we've been struggling with storage, with everything at that tiny shed at the common. And with the more programs and more stuff we do, the more equipment and all that we have. The main thing has always been the Christmas stuff. And what we've been doing is when BCT, Bolton Conservation Trust, gave us the common, they have a old container at the transfer station that we've been using. But over the years, and it was probably like that from the beginning that they did, it leaks water from the roof that drips, and now there's a big hole on the floor. And we share it with Conservation Trust, and between the two of us, we both have run out of room. It's no longer more space. And most of the Christmas stuff is in there. I do have a little other stuff in there, but it's mostly Christmas. So, and the other problem is we have, the guys have been great. We have the DPW guys coming and delivering the Christmas stuff to us. So we thought it would be great if we could get more storage right at the common, that it would be right there when we needed it. So we were looking to put it right near the porta potty, right on that right side. And the variance works out good, and it's out of the parking lot way. It's the 20-foot one, so it's not that big. And I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you. Included in our packet and also in some supplemental material that Jenny forwarded us, we had some images of the site plan itself, indication of where you would put the storage container, and then I think a picture of basically the types of storage containers. But I think I read that you were looking into getting one that was green, or even potentially having it painted to blend into the surroundings.
Yeah, yeah. So the ones that we've looked at a few of them. They run from the ones that we've looked at was like 2,800 to 3,200. They were all, one was off-white, one might have been green. There was some the red color, but no matter what, we would try to look for a green one. But no matter what, if it wasn't green, we would paint it. And we also thought about maybe having like an artist or something draw some trees or some to blend in there too, if that is down the road. But that's what we're thinking. But yeah, we would paint it green if it wasn't.
Got it. Questions from the board?
None from me.
No, I think it makes sense. It would be nice to alleviate some of that work from DPW, so I think it serves multiple purposes.
Yes.
Yep,
I
I
agree.
agree. Makes sense. So with that, is there a motion to approve the request from Parks and Recreation to locate a 20-foot storage container adjacent to the parking lot at the town common on Community Way?
So moved.
I'll second that.
And roll call, Kate,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes. Thank you, Lisa.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Ed.
Lisa.
Yes, that'll help.
All right. Have a great evening and good luck
Okay,
with
thanks.
everything.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay. Back to you, Marie.
All right. In terms of staffing, if you remember the other vacancy announcements, the DPW director, foreman, and administrative assistant had gone through candidate screening and interviews and recommend extending an offer to a qualified candidate with the start date of January 2nd, 2025. I will bring this individual forward to the board for introduction, or should you wish to wait to have a start date of January 3rd? Yes. Sorry, I'm like looking at January, yeah, and January 2nd, and have the appointment occur at the select board meeting. I know that the board had allowed me to appoint and police candidates and then bring them for introductions. I request the insight of the board on this candidate.
Sorry, so I'm just looking at the calendar. Thursday, January 2nd. Do we already have a meeting scheduled for that date? Yes.
What is the pleasure of the board? This individual, should they accept, could start as of the 3rd. Or
Well, sorry, Jenny's gonna unmute herself, I think.
I was just double checking the calendar. Yes, we do have a meeting scheduled that day. Our meetings for January are the 2nd and the 16th.
Okay, so I guess maybe I'm just not understanding the question. If we're already going to be meeting on the 2nd, do you actually, like, what do you need us to do today?
my question is, do you want then the candidate start date would be the 3rd? And I can bring them to the board on the 2nd for appointment by the board? Or I could, have them start on the 2nd, a Thursday. Have them come to the board,
Yeah, okay.
their first.
I'm personally fine with you having them start on the second if, you know, if the DPW director supports hiring that
Yeah.
person, but I'd be interested to hear if Kate or Stan have a different view.
I have no issue with the administrator, you know, just introducing us to the worker after the fact.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Well, then the candidate will be coming on the 2nd to the board and they will be starting, hopefully, should they accept the offer on the 2nd. More updates.
Wait, hold on 1 second. I'm just gonna ask Jenny to mute yourself again because there is some back.
Sorry.
Oh, I can, yeah. All right. The police department continues the active recruitment, and in the past week, one conditional offer was extended to a full-time candidate as well as to 2 part-time candidates. When the chief is extending a conditional offer, there are requisite responsibilities on the part of the police department to engage in background work, as well as requisite responsibilities of the prospective employee to go for psych evals, et cetera. So this, you've probably seen this or variations of this multiple times. This is not, you know, we're extending an offer and you will start on this day. And as a reminder, the public hours for the town hall on Tuesday, the 24th, next Tuesday, will be from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. In looking at the prospective calendar for Thursday, December 26th, it does look like a skeleton crew, and I will be coming up with a decision in the next few hours as to how to approach that.
Okay,
All right. The budgets. We met at the end of November, and I presented sort of a brief overview of where we were, and the board requested to status and provide input once all of the budgets are in. As of now, all operating budgets and capital requests, excluding the regional school district, but including Minuteman, the Minuteman VOTEC, are in, and they're accessible to the board via Viewpoint. The accountant had put in a 4% increase in the Neshoba regional budget, operating budget, just plugging a number. That in and of itself created a 1.7 million deficit. So trying to see, well, where are we if there's a 0% increase? In other words, it's the same pricing for, or same operating assessment for fiscal 26 as 25. $1 million deficit. To back up a little bit, when budgets were distributed to boards, departments, and committees, they were requested, they were given the overview that this is a terrifically tight financial year. To be mindful of answering that question, what would you do or what would you recommend if your fiscal 26 appropriation were identical to your fiscal 25? And they performed admirably. No COLAs are reflected in this deficit number, neither for non-union or for union, since all contracts are unsettled in fiscal 26. That looming deficit number, though, does reflect an OPEB contribution of 270,000, which was just sort of a, okay, this is what it would be were we still on track. We obviously have a great deal of latitude to adjust it. I've gone through budgets line by line, attachment by attachment, and I'm meeting with individual boards, committees, and departments. There will be smaller dollar shifts that will be occurring prior to advisory kicking off their first meeting on the 7th of January. By smaller dollar, you know, every dollar is a dollar, but I'm expecting shifts, you know, reductions of 22,000 in one line item, reductions of 30,000 in another line item. Things that folks agreed they could defer for the coming year when this was suggested to them. The little chart at the bottom, just wanted to highlight, I believe that the boards, committees, departments responded admirably in terms of their estimated fiscal 2026 versus their budgeted fiscal 2025, in terms of the percentage change. And I also included the small dollar change. Employee benefits and other insurance. Employee benefits encompasses two things. One of them being that OPEB number. Again, we have some latitude on it. The other, though, being an increase in our Worcester Regional Assessment that went up 114,000, as well as our health insurance premium. Sort of worst case, we're carrying an increase of 91,000. We won't know the health insurance premium, in fact, until about January 23rd. But so we're carrying the worst 12% increase. If you notice, though, in terms of town departments, the percentages are incredibly small. Within this budget process, likewise, holding public safety constant, one shift in that reduction in public safety is due to an agreement for the 580 main inspections. The cost for the building inspector was formally carried in raise and appropriate. A close reading revealed that actually they will be setting up an escrow account that will revert to the town, but all inspection charges will be against that building permit fee. As mentioned a couple weeks ago, though, there is still an upcoming bond issuance for $80 million for the high school. When at the 3TA meeting this week, the superintendent and finance director acknowledged that that was in the works. They're tentatively looking at a February date. Without knowing the interest rate, but making some educated guesses that it's going to be between 3.5 and 4, with the presumption that they would be applying the bond premium and coupon to reduce the bonded amount, and that our enrollment in the high school is unchanged, as is Stowe's, as is Lancaster. The first payment, which would hit within fiscal 26 on Bolton's side, would be $1.4 million. Because of how budgets work, this doesn't affect the budget deficit because people have authorized this money. And so that authorization is a revenue number up top, and as well as balanced out by an expense number below. So in effect, it's a wash.
Marie, can I interrupt for 1 second? In your chart where you have the operating expenditures by function and then employee benefits, there's a year-over-year increase of roughly $464,000. You mentioned that includes like an assumed 12% increase in health insurance. And then that's also where the $270K for OPEB is baked in as well as.
Yeah, it's $243K for OPEB and $114,000 for our county retirement.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. So to loop back to the marching orders of the board, and I seek your direction now. As of the 25th, everyone wanted to see, correctly so, where the town budgets came in. And again, I'm committed to these one-on-one meetings prior to the advisory review to see what else could be moved around or deferred. But I do believe that the groups who'd submitted were very mindful of the tight financial picture. I'm seeking your direction because I know that mentioning reductions, it's almost as bad as implementing reductions in terms of staffing and morale. I know also that the board has been longstanding champions of the staff and respecting and appreciating the work that is done. If we were to hold public works and public safety harmless and decimate, and that is in the traditional definition of decimating, general government, human services, and culture and recreation, that would give a reduction, ignoring the operational and morale costs, that would yield about 275,000. This is not just, oh, cut staff hours by 10%, because many of the items within general government are fixed or they're integrally supporting. So, would one want to reduce your reserve fund by 10%? No, we have an assessment for wheat, which we can't reduce. Our legal is in there. Our contract with RRG is in there. The software costs are in there. So this, in and of itself, a 10% reduction isn't merely 10% reduction in hours, and everything flows from that. I ask if the board is willing to support an override, and in tandem recommend, if I should approach this, I discuss voluntary reductions in hours in tandem across all town departments. Because this number and the gap is significant. If the board is not willing to support an override, having that direction right now would let me broach with staff, acknowledging the impact on staffing and morale far in advance of May. So that's my initial ask. My secondary comment, and the reason I highlighted that 10% reduction, decimating, it's where you take out 1 out of every 10 people, and it's a Roman term, they would shoot them. But if the board elects to use one-time funds for ongoing operations, so that's all free cash, and doesn't replenish stabilization and doesn't fund OPEB, given that it's likely that the school is not going to come in at 0%. In effect, that's sort of the worst of all possible worlds, because we can reconfigure ourselves to cover that deficit, right? Sweeping our one-time funds, affecting our general government and human services and culture and recreation, and still knowing that there may need to be an override for the schools, and we would be an unstable footing. So I seek your direction, prepared to follow your marching orders.
Okay. Well, I don't want to say Merry Christmas. Thank you though for presenting the facts to us. I want to open it up to comments from Stan and Kate, but I just want to repeat what I understood you to be looking for, which is that we're about to head into the real heat of the work of the advisory committee as they go over the budget. That's going to really pick up in the new year. And it would be really helpful for you to know now whether the select board would be willing to support some level of override to get us through this challenge. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Anybody want to share their views or perspective or ask questions of Marie at this point?
Let Kate go first.
Thanks, Dan.
If somebody wants me to go first, I'm happy. I don't want to put you on the spot. I just wanted to.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I guess my thought is, I think that we run our town so leanly to begin with, and some of the services, Marie, that you're talking about cutting, like, culture, and, that's our Council on Aging, right? I'm not willing to cut that, because I already feel like they're not, some of these departments aren't getting enough. So there are things, and they're getting so little to begin with, that I would be more inclined to support an override than to cut those services that those are, to me, necessary. But I would really like to hear from more experienced people than myself, like Stan and Brian, kind of how we balance all this.
Okay, Stan, you want me to go next?
Sure.
Sure. So there's a lot of factors that go into this for me. I agree with what you said, Kate, about the fact that the town, I think, year over year really makes an effort to not be spending in an extravagant way. There are certainly parts of our budget that are honestly are under invested in when you think about the size of the population that they serve. So Council on Aging and to a certain degree library fall into that category. And the other thing is that while obviously we have a huge responsibility to the taxpayers of Bolton, and I think that's going to be like the toughest thing for us to try to navigate over the next several months. I really worry about maintaining the talented team that we have assembled within the town. And I think that if we start to go down a path that would require really significant and drastic cuts to our town budgets, we run the risk of losing that talent and then setting ourselves up for more trouble down the road. So I personally would like us to be able to make it clear earlier in this process that at least we as the select board are willing to work toward an override, but acknowledging that it will still be a really heavy lift. It'll need to get approved at town meeting, and that's not a foregone conclusion by any means. And so we're going to have to do a lot of work to put together a plan that can be explained to the taxpayers and justified to the taxpayers. So that's where I'm at.
Well, I agree with both of you in terms of the fact that in some cases we're underserving some of our constituents, and I certainly agree with you, Brian, that you know, cutting back potentially affects the hardworking team that we currently have. But before I will even consider considering an override, at the last meeting, and I hopefully Jenny distributed. Well, I've distributed it out at our meeting on December 2nd, and I gave it to Jenny in electronic form. I think there needs to be some shared sacrifice here. We're talking about a significant deficit. We're talking about potentially not funding OPEB. We're talking about not funding this, not funding that, cutting back hours, maybe reducing employees. I believe at this point, we need to look at and we need to discuss with our district management and with our school committee reps their budget, because at the last meeting, I identified not affecting anything related to the education of our kids, over $8 million in employee salary, which represents 15% of the total $43 million employee base of non-teaching personnel, which includes 15 to 20 or more clerical positions. And I think our district management and our school committee need to really look at that and to see where they can come up with some efficiencies in terms of their operation. I find it hard to believe that we have 15% of the total salary line item with non-teaching personnel. I mean, this is not a huge conglomerate where we're doing manufacturing and marketing and research and development. So I think there needs to be some shared sacrifice here where we don't impact what the kids are getting educated on, but there's what I believe a lot of middle management here. And I think we all need to look at that, because it can't be all sacrifice on Bolton. It cannot be, and I will not support an override unless there is some shared sacrifice here. I will absolutely not do that.
Yep.
So I think we need to engage constructively with Kirk Downing and his team and our school committee reps, and figuring out where we can streamline some of the, because Brian, you and I both know, I mean, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. You've been on advisory for over 10. We've streamlined the crap out of our budget. There's no place to go. There's absolutely no place to go anymore. So it's got to come from somewhere, and I think it's time that we all pitch in.
Yeah, I agree completely, Stan, and I think we're actually all aligned in that regard, in the sense that an override may ultimately prove to be a necessary way to get through this budget cycle, but certainly not an override plan that doesn't involve, as you say, shared sacrifice and shared solutions that include the district. So I think, if I'm summarizing the message, Marie, for your sake, there's openness to an override as a path forward, but one that must also include the school district in partnership, and also, as Stan said, shared sacrifice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It cannot be one-sided. I won't accept that.
Is that the direction?
Helpful. That is helpful. Yep. I will continue my going through. I'm now formerly I'd been at the 20,000 and the 10,000. Now I'm sort of at the point of looking at the invoices supporting contracts that we currently have. So I guess I'm at the ground level. But also had proposed, should the board wish to send questions, because I've been meeting individually and have, through the work of Jenny, have a series of meetings that you want answers to, that perhaps could require some calculation or something, because I realize not everyone is great at answering questions on the fly. I will take responsibility for distribution to those boards and committees as a heads up that they should be prepared to answer this, either in their briefing with advisory or, through email.
And Marie, you would like us to send you those questions by when?
I'm tracking against the advisory calendar, and so ideally, the first slew of questions is related to animal control, as well as items falling under the DPW Public Works Tree Warden. So in effect, if I could get questions that you want, I could send the advisory calendar out 1 week in advance. So, by next Friday, questions for the folks who are coming on the 7th, and we'll stagger it that way.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I guess, was that the end of the finances portion of the
That's
team?
the end, that's the end of the finances portion.
I guess just a follow-up, and maybe this bleeds into a little bit for future agenda items discussion, but I do think you should reach out to the superintendent and just figure out a process for how we can start having that more in-depth conversation. Okay, up next, select board business. The first would be public service announcements. I don't have any. Does anybody else have any public service announcements?
Not for me right now.
Nope.
And Jenny and Marie, any public service announcements from you? Okay. Then we're gonna begin the review of draft personnel policies. Thank you, Marie and Jenny, for sending those out earlier this week. Marie, do you want to say anything to tee this up?
Sure. What I had distributed to the board is, in effect, to backstop or flesh out the personnel bylaws. a municipality's personnel policies are applicable to non-union staff, both salaried as well as hourly, as well as, benefit eligible and non-benefit eligible. And they're applicable to union staff if the union contract is silent on those matters. So in effect, it's sort of the catch-all superstructure. The thing that I'd done in truth was through my membership in the Mass Municipal HR Association, snagging and compiling multiple communities' policies, re-reviewing them, and looking for a community who had recently also had a legal review of those policies. I have distributed these to a subset of the department heads for their feedback and wanted to cue this off with the board having a copy. I'd realized I hadn't done the automatic update of the table of contents to give me feedback overall in terms of the direction, as well as to email me any edits or suggested changes or things you would like to discuss further, with the ideal vision of approval at the first meeting in January on the 2nd.
Okay, well, thank you. I had messaged you earlier to let you know I haven't made my way through all 70 or so pages, but just in terms of the process, if we have edits to send you, will you be able to basically show us like a red line at our next meeting?
Yep, I will.
Okay.
I will. One other benefit of this is, as some of the town hall staff are in transition and new, is this would greatly assist both the treasurer, collector, and me in terms of what to hand to folks and to point to versus, going through a too wordy explanation. So.
Okay, so since our next meeting is on January 2nd, let's make sure everybody has their comments into Marie before the new year.
I have already done mine.
What a good doobie.
Yes.
Okay, now Marie, next up, non-criminal disposition fines discussion, and then the potential vote to adjust the Conservation Commission recommended fee schedule.
Certainly. Actually, if we could take these in reverse order.
Sure.
For the fees discussion, all of the departments that are charging fees were asked to go through and both review their own fees as the cost of providing services has increased, and to review our fees against our comparable communities and see if we were in the neighborhood. This is something that's also in the advisory committee's financial policies handbook. So for those fees, and this is not fines, for elected boards and committees, due to the town's adoption of a flavor of Mass General Law, they can implement them. For an appointed board or committee, such as the Conservation Commission, they will request that the select board approve. The Conservation Commission has done the groundwork of the fee comparison across comparable communities. They've discussed and posted this in their meeting, and they are seeking the board's approval of the changes that are highlighted in the Excel in the packet.
Okay, I had a chance to review. Stan or Kate, did you have questions about the proposed changes that were in Rebecca's materials?
No, I don't.
No questions.
Okay, I had no questions either. So could we have a motion to approve the adjustment of the Conservation Commission's recommended fee schedule as presented in our packets?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Roll call, Kate,
Yes.
Stan,
Yes.
I'm also a yes. Is that what you needed, Marie?
That is what I need. And this is not the only department or committee that will be adjusting their fees, they're sort of like Kate. They're first out the gate. They've already done the due diligence and work. So I wanted to meet this request of Rebecca's and the commission's.
Okay. Great. Thank you. And then next up, future agenda items discussion. Oh,
the
sorry. No.
Fines.
Fines. Don't forget the
Fines.
fines.
Yes. So a document was distributed by Jenny this afternoon of non-criminal fines. I can share screen if that would be more convenient for the board to discuss. These are things that would require a town meeting vote to change. Ergo, it's great to get on this early.
Yeah, and why don't you share your screen, since in case people are watching, they'll have seen it before town meeting.
Nope, wrong, not that one. That is, sorry, it looks shockingly like fees. One moment. Oh boy, I have 19 Excels open. All right, here we go. Ta-da. And I can make this just a tiny bit smaller. This is the page, and kudos to Stan. As he'd highlighted correctly, the maximum fine per Mass General Law that can be levied is $300.
So this is a representation of what's in one of the bylaws relative to non-criminal fines. And it lists everything, the enforcing officer, and the current fine. I took upon myself the liberty of making a suggestion of what we should increase it to. Where it says the same, the $300 a day, as Marie correctly indicated, that is unfortunately the maximum that our great government in Boston has allowed us to charge for a fine. I looked at some of these. We had a brief discussion about this back some meetings ago. Personally, I think we should increase the fines to make them more important, if you will, or to make them more consequential. I think some of the numbers in terms of the fine per bag or the fine per offense are rather low, and I don't think it's enough of a sting for individuals who decide that they wish to violate what they're doing here. So these are some of the suggestions that, in terms of the updated fine in the column E, are some of the suggestions that I came up with in terms of increasing it. I believe also in the second tab, one of the things is the whole process of the dog licensing fines, and the amount of work that needs to be done by our town employees to chase down people who aren't willing to pay a $10 or a $15 dog licensing fee is just horrendous. And the number of steps and all the things that they need to do. So I propose some additional or increased fees. And that and the non-criminal fines. I've also discussed this with Jen Markey, and she is fine with what has been proposed here. And all of this would need to be incorporated in a article for the annual town meeting.
Okay. Well, thank you for doing all that legwork, Stan and Marie. And since this would have to be a town meeting article, I'm just anticipating some of the questions that the public might have. And I don't want to create any unnecessary extra homework, but people may be interested in knowing, especially on the non-criminal fines tab, like how often are these provisions, how often are violations found? Because like, I'm just looking, there was one about hawking of fish, fruits and vegetables going from a $20 a day fine to a $100 a day fine. Like, how often does that even come up? I think might be a question that people ask at town meetings. So if we have some of that information available,
Okay.
just be good to know. But I mean, all the numbers look fine to me. Kate, any feedback?
Yeah, I don't have an issue with it. I mean, I think the fines should serve as a deterrent to people and also should reflect some of the costs that the town bears in terms of the administration of doing all this stuff. So,
Okay.
So just to clarify, it sounds like then one task is to find out the incidence of these violations, but likewise to acknowledge that this would go forward for a town meeting warrant article to update the bylaw amounts. It moves to the town meeting drawer.
Yep.
Got it.
There was one tab in there relative to violations of the scenic road bylaw. Right now, it's basically a $30 fine for removal of stone wall, whether you remove a foot or 100 feet. And I believe our previous town planner had indicated to me that something in your town, Marie, that they were more aggressive in terms of that. I think perhaps working with our planning board, I think we need to have something a bit more aggressive than a $30 one-time fee for removal of stone wall. I think it needs to be much more severe. And he had suggested something along the lines of, some larger number per foot per day. But I mean, I don't have a great handle on that, but I think that's another thing which is in a bylaw, relative to the scenic road bylaw and violation of removal of stone walls.
It will relay to Pam, and this would be applicable to those roads designated under the scenic roads. Correct?
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so Marie, you have what you need on that, correct?
We do.
Great. Now we're on to future agenda items discussion. Obviously following up on
yeah.
the finance piece, we want to have a conversation with the school district.
Yes.
Yes, and actually, Brian, if you recall, way back in the way past history, when we were not necessarily getting along, being able to communicate properly with the school committee, the select board designated you as the liaison to the school district and the school committee. And I don't know if maybe in a future meeting you want to relay anything relative to that, but I think one of the discussions we should have is how we want to communicate to the district and the school committee the issues relative to our issues on the upcoming budget and how we want to address that. And also I had indicated, and I believe I provided to Jenny last time, electronic documents relative to where our well, not necessarily our district, but our schools in Bolton fall in relative to the DESI report card and with U.S. News and World Report. And I think that needs to be perhaps a much longer term conversation, but I think we need to get the ball rolling on that, where they're not faring as well as some of our other communities. And I think that needs to be also addressed, perhaps separately and longer term, but I think I view it as an issue.
Yep. That makes sense to me. I think just in terms of the follow-up with the district, the approach, typically I've reached out to our school committee members instead of the superintendent. And so I would say that Marie, you probably have the administrator to
Yeah,
administrator
the
relationship,
superintendent, yeah.
but I'll reach out to
Mhm.
Amy Cohen as well to let her know about the discussion we had at tonight's meeting.
Mhm.
Great.
Kate, any future agenda items for you?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about, I know that right now we're having our town warrants delivered with the Bolton Independent. And I'd like to talk about maybe trying to update that bylaw, which is section 59-2. To maybe, my concern is that we may not have a Bolton Independent forever that's willing to distribute our town warrants for free. And, we would then be responsible for the postage for mailing a copy to each and every household in Bolton. And I think we're probably at the point in the universe where maybe we could think about electronic distribution or, posting on the website instead of needing to get a physical copy to households. So I'd like to have a discussion about updating the method of delivery of the town warrant.
Okay. Go ahead,
Also-
Marie.
Also, just wanted to remind the board that the fire chief will be coming to the second meeting in January for discussion of the ALS services and financial performance outlook.
Great.
Okay. Anything else for future agenda items? Okay, seeing none. Next, we have approval of bills, payroll warrants W25-12 and W25-12A. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Roll call. Kate,
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
I'm also a yes. We do not have any minutes for approval tonight, but the next item on our agenda is to move into executive session. I just wanted to note that we will briefly return to open session for the purposes of adjourning only. So after that executive session is over, we'll come back into open session to adjourn. But for the record, the purpose of the executive session is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for purpose 4, to discuss the deployment of security personnel or strategies with respect thereto. Is there a motion to enter executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Kate,
Yes.
Stan,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes.
Now you must wait while I put individuals in the waiting room. Wow.